Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something, well, it's kind of spooky, right? Like this idea of deep doubt.
Yeah.
It feels like it's getting harder and harder to know what's actually real online these days, especially with AI getting so good at making fakes.
It's true, and it's something that's becoming more and more important for anybody who's interested in AI to think about, like, where is this all going?
Exactly. I mean, we all love the cool stuff AI can do, but what happens when it's used to create things that are practically indistinguishable from reality?
It's not just about fake videos or photos anymore. It's almost like the very idea of truth is kind of dissolving. Like, what can we actually believe?
Right. And that's a question we're going to try to grapple with today using this fantastic article that we found by Jay Poole.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. He's the guy behind the Tech Frontiers YouTube channel. You should all check it out, by the way. Super interesting stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, his article, it was originally in Ars Technica, but we found it republished in Wired.
Yeah.
And in it, he really breaks down how this whole thing with AI-generated content is pushing us into what he calls a new era of, like, media skepticism.
And he goes even a step further than just skepticism. He talks about this concept of the liar's dividend, which is something that's being debated a lot in, like, legal circles.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It's the idea that even just the fact that deepfakes exist, right? It gives anyone the ability to just say, like, oh, that video of me, that's not me, it's the deepfake.
Right.
And who can really say for sure that it's not?
Exactly. It's like this instant shield, right? Like plausible deniability on steroids. Imagine you're caught on camera doing something you shouldn't be doing, and you just say, nope, that's a deepfake.
Yeah.
And with all the distrust out there these days, people might actually believe you.
Exactly. And how do you prove it?
Right.
It's incredibly difficult to disprove that kind of claim, especially when, even if you have really sophisticated tools for detection, they have their limits.
Yeah.
And this is not some hypothetical future problem either. This is happening right now.
Oh,
We've actually seen cases where federal judges are, like, trying to figure out what to do because they're realizing that, this could really mess up a trial if you can't trust any of the evidence.
I know, it's crazy. It's like this technology could potentially undermine the whole legal system.
Oh.
And it's not just courtrooms. Think about history.
Oh, yeah.
We rely on photos, videos, all these recordings to understand what happened in the past. But what happens when you can fake those things perfectly? It's like our entire collective memory becomes unreliable.
Yeah. And it really makes you question, like, what is truth? How do we decide what's real, especially when we have these incredibly powerful tools that can manipulate reality? And even before AI, right? I mean, history has always had manipulation and propaganda.
Oh, totally.
This isn't a new problem, but AI is adding fuel to the fire. It's blurring those lines in a way that we've never seen before.
It really is. And you know what's even more unsettling?
What's that?
There's this theory, the dead internet theory. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So it argues that a lot of the stuff we see online, like maybe most of it is already AI generated. It's like this weird thought experiment. But it kind of makes sense, given how much fake stuff is already out there. It feeds into this feeling that we're all living in some kind of simulation,
It's like a symptom, I think.
It is, yeah.
Of this deep doubt. It manifests in this really unsettling way that just makes you wonder, like, what is real anymore? What can you actually trust?
Exactly. And for a while, I thought, well, at least technology can give us some answers. I mean, we're seeing all these new tools pop up that claim to be able to detect AI-generated content. It felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a way to fight back,
I get it.
Like the cavalry is coming. But is it really that simple? Is technology really the answer here?
I wish it was. But unfortunately, it's not really that simple. These tools, they're helpful, don't get me wrong, but AI is getting better all the time, too.
So what? It's like an arms race then?
Pretty much, yeah. As soon as we develop a new way to detect a fake, the fakers find a way to get around it. It's a constantly moving target.
That's so frustrating. So then, if we can't always rely on technology to sort this out for us, what can we do? Like, how do we as regular people avoid being fooled?
Well, this is where I think Poole's article gets really interesting because he suggests that maybe the answer isn't just about technology. Maybe it's about us.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean?
He says we need to get better at something that AI can't replicate easily, something that's uniquely human, media literacy and critical thinking skills.
I like this. Like, we need to level up our defenses, right?
Yeah.
But those are big concepts. How do we actually put that into practice?
So Poole breaks it down into a few really practical strategies. Think of them as tools for navigating this crazy world of information.
Okay, I like it. I'm ready to build my toolkit. What's the first tool?
First, context and provenance. So instead of just looking at the content itself, you got to dig deeper. Like, ask yourself, where did this information come from? Who created it? And why? What's their motivation?
So it's about looking at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
Like not just taking things at face value, but
Right.
really trying to understand where they came from and why they exist. It's almost like being a detective.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads us to tool number 2, relying on credible sources.
Okay. Now that's a tricky one, right? What one person considers credible, another might think is totally biased.
Absolutely. And that's where critical thinking comes in. It's about recognizing your own biases and then actively trying to find different perspectives. Don't just get stuck in your own echo chamber where everyone agrees with you.
Right.
Challenge yourself to understand different points of view.
It's about being open to the possibility that you might be wrong, right? Not just shutting down anything that doesn't fit with what you already believe.
Exactly. And even when you're really careful about your sources, there's still another crucial tool that Poole talks about, and that's skeptical analysis.
Oh yeah, this one's important.
Even if something comes from a source that seems trustworthy, we can't just take it as gospel, right? We always have to question, look for inconsistencies, and just consider other possible explanations.
So even if a video looks totally real, we should still be asking ourselves, could this be faked? Are there any signs that AI was used to create this? Is there maybe a simpler explanation that I'm missing?
Exactly. Sometimes the most obvious explanation is the right one. We're so quick to jump to AI manipulation these days that we might overlook other possibilities. So yeah, we got to train ourselves to pause, think critically, and not just let our imaginations run wild.
It reminds me of like the scientific method,
Oh, yeah.
approaching information with a healthy dose of skepticism, testing our hypotheses, and being willing to change our minds based on the evidence.
That's such a good analogy. And the cool thing is, these skills, this way of thinking, it's not new. I mean, humans have been dealing with truth and deception forever, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, there's always been propaganda, misinformation, bias reporting.
Exactly. So in a way, AI is just presenting a new set of challenges in an age-old battle for truth.
And just like we adapted in the past, we can adapt now. Right?
Yeah.
We just have to recognize that AI is a powerful tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's up to us to make sure it's used responsibly.
I completely agree.
So, with all that said, what does this mean for, just everyday people?
Well-
People trying to figure out what's real in this increasingly confusing digital world.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel totally overwhelmed by all this talk of deepfakes and AI and everything.
No, and it's understandable to feel overwhelmed, but the most important thing to remember is that you have agency. You're not just a passive consumer of information. You have the power to choose what you look at, how you engage with it, and ultimately, what you believe.
It's about being proactive.
Yeah.
Not letting the algorithms control everything, but actively seeking out different viewpoints, challenging our own biases, and really honing those critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. It all comes back to those 3 strategies we talked about: context and provenance, credible sourcing, and skeptical analysis. Those are the tools that will help you make sense of this landscape and make informed decisions about what to trust.
So in a weird way, maybe this whole deep doubt thing is actually a good thing.
Maybe, yeah.
Like it's forcing us to become more critical, more informed, and more engaged with the information we consume.
I think so. It's like a wake-up call to be more mindful about how we use technology and to take back our power in a world where it's easy to feel like we're at the mercy of algorithms and AI.
Well said. I think this conversation has given us a lot to think about. So to recap for our listeners, just to make sure we're all on the same page,
Yeah.
we started with this idea of deep doubt, right?
Yeah.
Where it just feels like it's getting tougher to know what's real online, especially with AI being able to create like really convincing fakes.
Yeah, exactly. And just the fact that deepfakes even exist creates that liar's dividend.
Right. Like anybody can just deny something's real by saying, oh, it's a deep fake.
Yeah.
And you can't really prove them wrong.
Exactly.
And we talked about how that's affecting everything. Courtrooms, even our understanding of history, like the lines are getting really blurred.
Yeah, totally.
We also talked about those automated detection tools,
Right.
which they sound promising, but they're not a perfect solution.
It's a constantly evolving landscape.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So we really need to focus on like empowering ourselves with those human skills, the media literacy, that critical thinking, the skeptical analysis.
For sure. I mean, those are skills that AI can't replicate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Jay Poole, he had some great strategies in his article.
Oh, yeah.
Remembering where information comes from, like context and provenance.
Right.
Making sure we're using credible sources, and always, always, always applying that skeptical analysis.
Yeah, questioning everything.
Yeah, exactly. So for our listeners out there,
Yeah.
don't just scroll through your feeds passively.
Yeah.
You got to dig a little deeper. Question your assumptions, find different perspectives, and if something seems a little too good to be true, well, it probably is.
Yeah, if you're not sure about something, do some research, consult different sources, fact check. That's the best way to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And a healthy amount of skepticism, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're cynical or distrusting of everything.
No, it's a sign of a sharp mind. It just means you're being careful, you're thinking critically, and you're not taking everything at face value.
I think that's a great place to wrap up.
Yeah.
This has been a really, really interesting deep dive into deep doubt and all the challenges we're facing in this age of AI.
Right.
It's complex. There's no easy answers. But if we arm ourselves with the right tools and mindset, I think we can handle it.
I agree. We're not powerless in this.
Exactly. So for anyone wanting to explore these ideas even more, definitely check out Jay Poole's YouTube channel, Tech Frontiers.
He's got some fantastic content about AI and the ethics around it.
Yeah, it's really thought-provoking. But before we go, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest challenge in spotting AI-generated content these days? Hit us up on social media. Let us know.
Because in a world that's changing this fast, staying curious and staying informed is more important than ever.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay sharp and don't stop questioning.